Hello everyone, and welcome to a super fun, brand new type of video coming to my channel, my tier list re-reviews, where I watch my original tier list video from before the season, and we listen to some of the points that I make, the pros and cons, where I put each spec, but then we use the information from the ladder developing, from the high MMR games we've played, from week 2 of this season, to make some corrections, right? To see what I got right and what I got wrong. I have the original video pulled up right here that we'll be watching, part by part, and then I have the original tier list ready for modifications. So let's dive right into it. Spoiler alert, the S tier actually looks pretty good because it's probably easy to tell which specs are going to be very, very good, but everything below that has some problems. So when we get there, we're going to have to make some changes. I think that'll be super fun and funny to see what I got wrong and anything I got right. So let's dive into it. We're going to do, and of course I'm just going to get DK out of the way. Frost DK S tier. It has to be. It is the definitive best melee for team fighting because it sets up goes for the rest of your team. So it enables the rest of your team without being a support class because it also has so much individual power and utility on its own. And this is what I mean. You double grip everything into a... Yeah, so what I'm going to effectively say here is it has fantastic peels, it has an AoE stun setup, it has grip chains, and it does have all of those things, and they're all exactly that good. Frost DK is not super well played, but the people who play it do extremely well. Like, it's not a high participation spec, and a lot more people play Unholy, which we will get to. That one needs to be changed. But Delirium, also, I didn't even recognize how good of a tool that would be against all the monks being around and the mages and the demon hunters. Delirium just is the ultimate peeler tool when you combine that with grip chains, and only Frost DK has that. It is a movement enhancing ability, cooldown slower, which is just something unique to Frost. It's very cool. So yeah, I think underrepresented but extremely potent in all the lobbies that it is, and Nicholas is already 2600 plus on Frost DK. I think I'm happy leaving it in S tier, and don't worry, there's a new God tier coming up that will help distinguish some of these really broken specs. So Frost DK probably stays S tier. Ladder looks to agree with that, even if it's underrepresented, the people who are doing well with it. Let's see what I said about. I could add one, but I don't think I'd put anything else. Can I just do this for like 3 seconds so people who are actually watching the video know that it's like A+? Did that help anybody? It just is all the things that I said about Frost, but without the AoE stuns. And AoE stuns in an 8-person team are really, really important. They set up the go, both your own go and your teammates' go behind you, and not having access to that would drop it a rank, I would say. But it's still a DK. Okay, so my point is Unholy has everything that Frost has minus the AoE stuns. That's almost entirely true. I think I misrepresented how much raw output Unholy has, how fantastic it is at winning 1v1s, how much tankier it is because of AoE necrotic wounds, how useful a stackable Mortal Strike can be. So you lose the AoE stuns, but you get all those things. So the first change, actually, we are doing... Unholy just goes up to meet Frost in S tier. It is just as good as Frost, if not a little better. Not a God tier spec. We'll get to those, but Unholy, yeah, I mean, it doesn't have the AoE stuns, but it has extreme output. It has stackable Mortal Strike. It is so tanky. You can win 1v1s against anything sitting in base. Really, if you can get the jump on them and you can pull them out with Raise A-Bomb, oh my god, forget about it. You are a monster, and you're so hard to deal with. You can spin forever. It's fantastic. Okay, blood. We'll see. Nature category. You can AoE grip as well. You've got Limb and Gorfian's Grasp, right? So you can pull everybody into a pile, death chain them, and nuke, and then you can kidnap things. And you don't even have to just kidnap the entire game, but what you could do is you could do your go, get somebody killed, and then take the other healer away. I mean, that's actually kind of brutal and disgusting. It is disgusting. I don't think I'll personally be doing that. I'll be sticking to Frost, but you could set up a go with death chain. It's a PvP talent for a lot of AoE damage, and then you could take some of their players out just by killing them, and then the last healer who used everything and got away now gets pulled away into Africa by the Blood DK. You can... Okay, so the moral of the story is Blood DK can kidnap healers. It's very tanky at a node, but honestly, only compared to other DPS specs, it can still die, and it can absolutely get CC'd. The team fights don't really happen. That's going to be a theme of this video. I like a big 6v6 or 8v8 team fight never, ever, ever happens, which diminishes tank's value quite a bit. Blood is probably still the best tank. or at least one of them, and it kidnaps healers. But actually, both the other DK specs can kidnap healers, and they have so much more agency in every situation. 1v1s, 2v2s, 3v3s. They can peel, Blood can peel. It's probably the best, because it has Death Grip Chains, it's just the best tank. But I don't think I'm comfortable leaving any tank right now at A tier, because tanks are really underrepresented, and you have to play in another tank lobby, and they're not good at flag carrying. Blood DKs are not. You can't get them across the... You can't. So it's weird. But tanks right now, very underrepresented. I think I'll move Blood down to B tier. It can kidnap healers, though, absolutely. All right, what do we got? Havoc is S tier. It's got everything you need. It is the anti-DK, I guess, right? Where DK has anti-mobility, DH has absurd mobility. You can get anywhere you need with double fell rush meta. You have a movement speed increase from your mastery. You pair perfectly with a DK because you have AoE damage, AoE mortal strike, another AoE stun.
That's probably true.
On-demand damage, hunt, huge burst. Essence Break, I-Beam now, huge buff to I-Beam. Your I-Beam would just pad everybody in the AoE stun. Oh my god, you would love to play with a DK.
They recently fixed that.
You have great self-healing. You have great defensives. You have Blur that gets you out of many things incoming because you're just going to dodge it. You have Darkness for your team. You have Reverse if you want to, but don't... Okay. DH mobility keeps it S tier. That is true. Its defensives are good, and its mobility is exceptional. It has Vengeful Retreat, double fell rush meta, so it can get anywhere it needs to be, and in BG Blitz, that is actually correctly predicted to be exactly what you need. You need to be able to get to exactly where you need to be. You can literally Vengeful Retreat, double fell rush, meta hunt, and you could be from one side of the map to the other, immediately making an impact with meta and hunt. So... yeah, I think the latter agrees. DH is S tier, and is exceptionally powerful for all those reasons. So yeah, I think I nailed this one. Its damage output is maybe a little lower than I expected, but I even predict that to change. Oh, okay. Overshadowed by Havoc in that situation, but Vengeance utility is absolutely insane. It has all of that mobility. It can cap bases. It can hold bases forever because it's a tank, right? So you could just find yourself like capping a base in a Fear, DH Fear. I know it's weird that they have one. And then holding it for the end of time because you are a Vengeance Demon Hunter and your survivability is so high. And if you ever got low, you could double leap away. Okay, yeah, so Vengeance probably B tier specifically because tanks are so bad, but it is absolutely, if Blood isn't the best tank, then Vengeance is the best tank. Its CC capping is actually real. It can throw people miles away, and it can hold bases, and it does have insane mobility. And it is probably overshadowed by Havoc, at least on ladder it certainly is. Again, tanks have to be paired with other tanks. It's not nearly as bad. It's actually a fantastic FC as far as tanks go. It's probably the best FC, honestly, because mobility is king. Again, Guardian cannot just face tank people, and Blood can't either, but Vengeance can get away from them, and that's what really matters. So I might even just leave this in A and just call it the best tank and just be happy with it. Because it is. It's the highest rated tank, it's the most productive tank, and it's the best FC tank. So it's probably just the best tank. So I'll just leave it in A. Yeah, that's probably exactly right. Oh, here come the Warriors. It's going to be difficult with the teams not being perfectly organized. They might just not have anything that can stay on you. I mean, you're so fast. Yeah, so more mobility.
So you've got the
Vengeance.
and also killing.
Also, that's all true.
So now we have things like, let's go on to Warrior because that's another 2. I have to drop them in B, which is a little tragic. They just, right? If Demon Hunter provides the AoE Mortal Strike, then neither of these guys have that niche when Demon Hunter does it so much better because they are more mobile. Demon Hunter is more mobile. It has more on-demand pad damage with bloodletting and, oh god, blade dance, right? You can just anymore. Pad everything around you. Your burst is always up as Demon Hunter. Sorry, I'm talking more about Demon Hunter than I am talking about Warrior. But the idea is that Warrior is an AoE Mortal Strike class. Even Fury, like you can AoE Rampage and put Slaughterhouse stacks on multiple people, but it's just not nearly as reliable. They're easily peeled. They are not quite as survivable, but they have nuclear AoE burst damage. So if you pair them, again, with the DK. DK is the enabler, I'm telling you. That's why it's S. If you
And
pair them
also
with a
probably
DK,
true.
you can just have the big Slayer or whatever hero talents. I think it's going to be Slayer, but whatever hero talents Warrior are running, the big AoE one-shot with all their sweeping strikes and their whirlwind rampage and all of this nuclear stuff. That is just going to be really, really good for Go.
Okay, I think I get the gist of it. It's funny. Yeah, probably. There's not a lot of huge team fights, and ARMS exactly excels when it can support a huge team fight. It's not fantastic in 2v2s or 1v1s, right? So it's really good at just being a utility melee where it benefits massively from the players that it can support around it effectively, where you have the AoE sharpen and all that AoE damage. And you have a lot of tools like Intervene and AoE Fear, and I've seen Omnivore play ARMS, and when he's in those great lobbies, he's honestly probably one of the most powerful players in the entire lobby, the most impactful player. But when you're in lower lobbies, it is a massive, massive struggle. I think I would probably just keep ARMS at B, and then probably maybe move Fury up, just because its raw damage output and immediate impact on any 2v2 you could ever be in is scary. But that was just really overtuned burst, and they did just get nerfed recently, so I could maybe see ARMS and Fury staying at B. Absolutely, a fantastic player in a fantastic lobby can make a difference, but this is more for the average player. Of course, that's what's watching my videos, and I don't think you would just like log on to ARMS and be like, damn, I'm just winning every game. So I think that's probably fair. Fury might just still be B after the nerfs, but its damage was so oppressive that we'll keep it A for now and see what happens. Next one. Oh, this is going to be funny. RPGs have been around a long time. I'm sure there's been a time. Ret is also kind of feeling B tier to me. It's squishy, actually, believe it or not, because its major defensive could be taken off by a million different things. You could just throw an MD in there from a Shadow, a Disc, a Holy. You can cleave. You can kind of pad. I'm not sure if I would consider it as a pad melee as Unholy or Demon Hunter, but you could definitely throw out a lot of AoE damage. You have Hodge, but people are generally on stun DR, and your stun is dispellable. Again, you have Bubble, but that is your major defensive in this situation, and it's just, if it gets taken off, you're just kill target the entire time. You're just, everybody would go red. That's my history. Now, things change, right? And the hero... Okay, I'll stop myself there. This one's so funny. I had Reddit B. Everybody told me I was insane. I made a pinned comment saying that, oh, let's move that up. It turns out B was exactly right. If you look at leaderboards, if you look at high MMR games, Ret struggles, actually. It totally does. It does not have the utility toolkit for RBGs. It's more for arenas. And it does have squishiness problems, and it does have pad damage problems, and its AoE is not as impactful as some of the other specs we've talked about. Red is just a B tier. Yeah, if you look at the ladder, it's 100% confirmed. If you play those games, it is really just struggling because of these points that I made. People talked about how like its 2v2 and 1v1 utility was good, but unfortunately when you're in 2v2s and 1v1s, you have a huge problem. You're going to be against 2v2 and 1v1 specs, like Sub and Frostmage, and you get demolished as a Ret Paladin in any of those situations. The other thing is Frostmages are rampant, and Ret just hates them. I mean, your freedom is taken away, you're proc-rooted over and over and over. Ret just struggles to get anywhere. It is so peelable. It cannot move. You cannot play your character playing a Ret Paladin. B was actually a really, probably almost generous in some ways, rating for this. So, yes, Ret B tier. Okay, all right, here we go. Okay, so Windwalker, unfortunately, is C. I think Windwalker is an amazing spec, and I think if you put it in the right hands, then people are scared of Windwalker, but their defensive toolkit is rough for, kind of like Warrior, the defensive toolkit is a little rough for RBGs. Instead of a bunch of self-healing, they kind of need to get out, kite, pour it out. Their karma can be taken off by a lot of things, or can just be melted through. Their damage is peelable. You can CC Windwalker very well, unlike DK Demon Hunter. Their mobility is fantastic. I just don't really know what they would do with it. I guess. Okay, well, I do know what they would do with it. They would go win bases. They can make an impact anywhere. They can kill FCs. They have tons of on-demand damage. They're not that squishy because short cooldown Fort Brew is really, really good. They do have port play. They do have flying serpent kick double roll. They are just mobile and
they have Immortal Strike, and they have burst damage, and they have decent utility, and they can spin bases for a while, and they can rot bases, and they can port to bases and cap them. Good Windwalker makes this A for sure. Absolutely. A good Windwalker is A. You don't see a lot of Windwalkers in BG Blitz, but when there's good ones, they are A. This is going to not be super well represented by the ladder because, again, nobody really plays them. They're not just like a traditional BG Blitz spec, but the good players playing them are terrifying, and they will kill you and in 1v1s and 2v2s, and they can get anywhere because they're so mobile. Yeah, it has the toolkit to be A. You just got to get more good players playing that spec. I guess I'm struggling with this one mightily. Holy cow. All right, and we go of that toolkit because they don't even have stealth to make the 1v1s happen. Okay, that's my argument. Let's hear yours.
Okay, that was my argument. It's A tier now.
Survival's very weird. It is a hunter spec, which means you could probably set a base. It has decent defensive toolkit and a pet. It can 1v1 pretty well. You can chuck bombs at players from afar while trying to kite, so you can 1v1. You can kite around the pillar in circles at Mage Tower. You've just got a weird toolkit for sure. I think maybe B is high, but you can chuck bombs into AoE, and if they have a really good bomb-enabling hero talent set, which I haven't got a chance to look at, then they would probably actually have weird AoE pod damage from a range, which is not even a melee, almost. I mean, this shouldn't even be in the melee section. Yeah, this is a really, really hard spec to rate. And it's really hard still now with the week 2 under wraps. It is phenomenal at 1v1s with double wall exil and range damage. It does survive extremely well. It's not as impactful as Marks by being able to just nuke people from across the map. It doesn't kill FCs as well as Marks. It doesn't kill on tempo as well as Marks. It doesn't have as much team fight take somebody out by just killing them from anywhere as Marks, but it does do a lot of things pretty dang well, and it's phenomenal at 1v1. So sure, B tier, right? That's the hardest thing to rate out of the entire list. I still don't really have a great answer. We're going to say B. Oh, here we go. Okay, that's good. Enhanced D tier, damn. Sorry, enhanced mains, yeah. Okay, yeah, it's really bad. It has been bad forever, so this is a very safe bet. If this is the one time it's good, then fantastic. Congratulations, enhanced mains. You win. But it has none of the things that make it good in RBGs. Its defensives are weird. The utility it brings are better brought by Ellie and even rsham, like things like Grounding Totem or Static Cling. Static Cling is cool, but Frosty K is so much better. You have the worst AoE damage toolkit as a melee possible.
Pretty true.
You just don't really have that type of toolkit. You get CC.
All right, I probably just have to pause it here. I was about to say you get CC'd. That is something that happens. Enhance was the most D tier spec of all time when the season started, but they got hyper juice buffed twice since then. Like we're talking 40%, 20%, 40% modifiers across the board 2 different times. So now they're good. But this rating was 100% right, and everybody knew it. Enhance was absolutely horrible, wretched spec. It does not get buffed all the way up to A or S tier, because it's true, it can get CC'd very well. Its AoE damage toolkit is not very good, its damage profile is not super good, its utility is fine, but it can do things, exceptional things, kind of like a Marks where you could just pick off a healer with your crazy Ascendance Burst, or you could win a 2v2 because you're so dang tanky. I don't really know what I meant by its defensives are weird. I think it's because when you're going them, they have a lot of heals, but then they're not doing globals for damage, and then it doesn't really feel like they're tanky at all. Now that they have these buffs and they're more oppressive with their single target damage, the fact that they can also self-heal every other global is really good for 1v1s and 2v2s. So Enhance was a D tier spec, but now I would say is a B tier spec because it was Super Saiyan Zenkai boost juiced by buffs from Blizzard. So let's keep going. Probably talk about how bad Enhanced Shaman is for a long time. Holy goodness. Okay. Oh, Rogue. Oh, wait. I got to sub. I didn't even notice.
Good, that's... Okay. Now we're talking about the one I mean, S++, right?
Yes.
Sorry. I pulled that way up. S++++.
Yes.
Sub Rogue. It does everything that I was... It was like the antithesis of everything I was just talking about. It is the one that kills you. It is the one that 1v1s you. It's the one that steals your base with unbelievable CC toolkit. It can cap on 2 people at the same time, or it could 2v3 cap on people, because you could stun one, blind the other, and then shadowy duel the third guy. And if you have one other teammate, right, to cap while you're shadowy dueling, you could actually just cap on 3 people at the same time. I mean, your ability to punish no trinket is good everywhere. It's good at a base.
Of course it is. Okay. Sub, without any question, is our first god tier spec. It was exactly all of those things and times infinity. I already said it would be S++++, and it is. It is that. So now we enable the god tier specs for confirmed specs that are good in every single situation ever. No matter what map you get, you want a sub-rogue. No matter what map you get, you probably want 2 sub-rogues. Sometimes if you have 3 sub-rogues and they have 0 sub-rogues, it doesn't matter how good they play, you've won by default. Sub-rogue caps anything, controls everything, gets anywhere. It even has 7-second cloak caps and 7-second cloak for passing off the flag. It has 100% sprint and 7-second cloak. It can grab the flag, be completely immune, get through your entire team, pass it off, and then kill your FC. He can flag run, flag kill, base assault, base sit. It does absolutely everything on every single map. It is god tier, and it probably always will be. God tier spec. All right, now we can move on to Assass.
Toolkit, but without the Shadow Dance and without the Shadowy Duel. But what it adds is AoE Silence, AoE Garrote Silence, AoE Bleeds, AoE Shiv for an AoE Mortal Strike while everybody takes more bleeds damage. It's like more of a team fighter rogue. It can still take a base or defend a base when it needs to, but it's pressure in teamfight cannot be ignored. AoE Silence,
right.
A lot of classes...
I'm going to stop myself there too. I don't know why I put this in A tier. Everything I say about it makes it look like an S tier spec, and then I just locked it in A. I don't know why I even did that. We'll just fix that up right now. It's not as godly as Sub-Rogue. Nothing is for DPS, but it's a rogue spec with all of those things. It adds AoE Silence, AoE Shiv. It's a monster peeler because AoE Shiv is also a huge slow. The AoE Mortal Strike is so monstrous from that as well. It is a team fighter rogue, but it's also just a rogue. It can destroy FCs. It's very difficult to get off you. It still has all of the rogue toolkit like 7-second cloak and sap and blind. So sure, it's an S tier spec. I don't know what I was thinking when I put it at A. I said things that made it look S tier and then put it at A. That was weird. Let's go to the next one.
And agree with that. Outlaw. Goodness. So it's a rogue spec, but it is trumped by sub in every way.
Well, that's true.
Can I put an asterisk on this? Like, it's a rogue spec, so it should be at least B tier, but it is a rogue spec that has another spec that does everything it could ever do better. I have to put it C tier because of that line. It is a rogue spec, so it's B tier, but sub-rogue exists, so it's C tier. It just has to be. There is nothing that Outlaw can do in an RBG environment right now that sub couldn't do better. It does not have Shadow Dance, right? They took that out from both the other specs. They brought that only to sub. It does not have Shadowy Duel. It does not have access to the same urgency of stun toolkit that sub has. Sub has the best at that by far. It does not have the AoE damage, AoE Shiv that Assassin has. It doesn't have the AoE Bleeds, the AoE Silence, just spamming Garrote.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, my little asterisk thing, yeah, I understand what I was getting at. It's an A tier spec because it's rogue. And I mentioned that, like, every rogue spec in a BG environment is just A tier by base and then God tier generally, right? It does actually have more movement speed than the other 2 rogue specs in its talent tree, so that's something I learned. Its damage profile is horrible compared to Assass, and still bad compared to sub, and it does not have sub's toolkit. But it's a rogue spec, and it can go really fast, so, and yeah, and it has its little grapple, right, and movement speed increase, so that makes it an A tier spec. I could probably even say it's S tier because it's a rogue spec, but I'd be happy putting it here. C tier was silly. I should have probably bounced it between A and B with the asterisk. C tier was a silly asterisk point. Anyway, it's not a C tier spec, obviously. Let's just move it up to A tier where it probably belongs. Okay. We're almost done with the melee. Oh, Feral.
So I'm I think, a very respectable B. Finally, we have Feral, which should just be A, because it does what Assassin Rogue does, where it could cap a base, it could sit a base, and it also has an AoE pad bleed build now.
Yeah.
So it really is just a sass. I mean, you take out the silence, but you might have a little bit more pad damage because sometimes Feral goes through this period, and I think this is one of those times where it can just tear, rip everybody, tear unto wounds.
Right.
This entire just a team, it just all of a sudden, when it gets its bleeds on everybody and just starts spamming the AoE rip thing, it just does like boomkin pad, but in the form of bleeds and physical damage. Feral goes through periods where it can either do that or it can't do that, and I think this is...
All right, I get what I'm saying. Feral is exactly all of those things. It's Assassin without the Mortal Strike and Shiv, though. It does not have the slow ability of Assassination Rogue in that regard. I think A tier is honestly probably a perfect spot for it. It does a lot of things, but nothing exceptionally well like the Rogue specs or some of the DKs, right? It doesn't have the peels like that at all. It does have Cyclone, though, which is really, really cool and great for capping. So I think A tier is a fine spot for Feral. The ladder probably agrees with me. It's not nearly as represented as the other things that we were talking about, or as high CR. So
it's one of the periods where
that's probably fine.
It can cap a base.
Is that the last melee?
Yes, it is.
All right. We got one done. So a lot of changes already. This will even out, I promise. Just wait for the rest of them. So now we're going on to range DPS.
So now we're going on to range. We'll start with Boom. It's an S tier spec. I think it's been an S tier spec in RBGs since the dawn of time. It can cap bases. It really can. It can just go cap them because it has the same CC toolkit that it needs to cap them as Feral does. You just clone people and get their base. You are really good at spinning because of your really long range spells, and then you can just get re-stealths, and then you can put Treants on the flag, and then you can get re-stealths again, and then you can spin with Moonfire from 95 yards away, not exactly 95, that was called hyperbole, but all of that is fantastic for sitting and assaulting a base, but then you go into team fight and you're a force. I mean, you're just a force. Boomkin does the most pad damage in the game. If you go into the history of RBGs,
okay, yeah, I'm going to say Boomkin does a lot of damage, and that's true. It always does that when you press Starfall. And while Boomkin's damage profile isn't as oppressive as it used to be, I don't think it matters. With Camel and RevZ playing Boomkin, you can see the true power of this spec, and they'll probably rise on the leaderboards without any question. Boomkin will take over the range DPS as it always does, and it's just getting some random buffs here and there, like to Star Surge. We've seen that come in tuning passes to deal with its damage profile being a little underwhelming, and it will only hyper accentuate that in RBGs. Boomkin just has the perfect presence for BG Blitz, so I knew that it would be up there, and people, now that they're playing it, very high experienced players are playing it, they're showing the power of Boomkin. It does do all of those things. So it's a little squishy, though. Actually, it's a little squishier than it used to be. So if there was anything to ever bring it down to A tier in the history of BG stuff, it would be now, because it's pretty dang squishy. But I don't think I can do that in good faith. So we move on. Oh, I talked about that one for a while.
Which is lurch you forward and give you a ton of movement speed, and you can even buff the movement speed to be even higher. But then it also makes you unslowable, and that's the ticket. Using your massive movement ability on a two charge system where it also makes you immune to future slows, I mean, there you go. That's mobility in a nutshell. You just have hover, and now you give hover to any class in the game, and they're the most mobile class in the game. I mean, that's just crazy. So fast. It even has the fell rush effect where it pulls you forward, right? And now you're immune to slows. So you could just get anywhere you need to. You could go to so here's the thing now. What do you do when you get there? Well, great news. You're a devastation dragon. So you have single target burst from shooting laser beams with Dragon Rage, and you have AoE burst with Deep Breath, Fire Breath, AoE Eternity Surge. Oh my gosh, right? You can, when you get to that base, you can vaporize somebody and help you win a 2v1 or a 2v2 when you get there if your base is under attack or you're trying to get a base and you just need to finish off the last.
All of that's true. Look at the ladder. Devastation, even though it's not nearly as high participation, high player base as some of the other specs, is dominating. Devastation is phenomenal. I was right. You could give hover to literally any spec in the game and they would be the most mobile spec in the game. That is completely true. And they are extremely bursty, and they have an 80% snare on their laser beam. Oh, that drives you crazy, doesn't it? Holy cow, they can peel as a dev. They can get there and peel, they can get there and do damage, they can do AoE burst, single target burst, they can do every single thing I talked about here and a little bit more. That 80% snare is ridiculous. I don't know why they have it, but they do. They have walls to make sure you can't kick them.
During their goes, you can't interact with them. Nullifying Shroud, wall to prevent kicks, hover immunity. They have absolutely everything. They're like there. You can't really do anything to stop what a dragon is doing. They're just going to do it. Oh my god, they're insanely good. That was a good read on Devastation. S tier, S tier, S tier. You guys, right? I'm not wrong though. it's really good.
No, I was not wrong.
Great. We're gonna go to Marks, and I'm also giving that S tier. For totally different reasons. Instead of being hyper mobile, it's hyper ranged. Their mastery is unlike anything else in the game, where, well, it's kind of like DH mastery, but in a totally different effect. You get a secondary effect from your mastery, but this one is ranged on your abilities. And when you combine that with Sniper Shot, now you have the most range out of anybody, and that one is not hyperbole. So
okay, we don't
let
really
me say that again.
Much,
you have the most range on your abilities out of any class, and that is not hyperbole,
still do.
which means they cannot affect
the most
you.
range.
So if you are on Temple, Temple of the Orb map, and you need to kill an orb carrier, and your team is falling behind a little bit, but those orb carriers have high stacks, you can do it from anywhere on the map out of stealth with Marksman single target burst. The only reason they seem bad right now is because everybody has 65% armor. I want you to remember that.
Wow, this was a long time ago. Nailed this one. There might not be as high CR marks as other specs, but if you put them in a high MMR game, they will do all of those things every single time. And even newer players have no problem killing FCs, killing orb carriers, killing anything they need. You struggle a little bit into team fights because you're very disruptible. You're not squishy anymore. I think that was true. The double wall, exil, all of these things, and procking, wall pop procking exil and exil procking wall from the black arrow thing, that tree. That makes you not squishy, but you're still very disruptible. You're susceptible to CC and grips and all these things. So you do have to position yourself extremely well. But there's not really a lot of team fights like that. Only Silver Shard has those big bruiser team fights. And Silver Shard is just one map. Everywhere else, you are an impact player in a single target situation all the time. And you can sit bases, and you can even assault bases just by killing and CCing. You have a lot of things you could do as marks, and I think I would leave this at S. If the only thing that stops it from being S is like disruptability, but I don't think that's enough. Double marks rogue is a force anywhere, so yeah, I'll keep this at S tier. Yeah, it does have all those things. It does have the most range in the game, even if you don't play Sniper Shot, which I don't think we do ever. So if you are able to sit on a base the entire time, and your team is doing really well in team fight, and all you need to do is they're not an AOE. Actually, just missed the other hunter spec being added. Okay, let's talk about BM then.
I did a glowing review in my top 5 video. This does not change that glowing review at all. The problem is it's a very powerful option for hunters to have if you just always want to sit a base, but that's all they can do.
That doesn't make any sense.
BM Hunter, notoriously bad AoE pad for a long time. That could finally change in War Within, but I have to be speculative here. Notoriously bad single target burst. Now its single target sustain is great. It is great. So if you're actually just training an FC, you could chase them across the entire map and your damage would never end, and you could just solo them.
No, you can't.
But your single target burst and your single target and your AoE pad and your AoE burst, well, don't even get me started. AoE burst for BM has to be the worst in the game, right?
That's
in an
true.
RBG setting, they're not an AoE burst class. That's not what they are in RBGs. Maybe that's different in PvE. It's not different in RBGs. So why I say all that is because I still give them a glowing review for what they do, but that's only one part of the game.
Yeah. Whoops. Holy cow. Super whoops here. It is only one part of the game, and base sitting is really not that big of a deal. Like, planting yourself at a base is a thing of the past. You need to be able to do things everywhere. And I kind of knew that. I don't really know how I let myself give them B. I mean, this is just such a whiff. Their sustain is fine for arenas, but no, they can't solo FCs. Do you know why? Because all the FCs are dragons and mistweavers, and you would literally they would just outrange your pets. You would never hit anybody. You have no mobility to chase after them. Your sustain doesn't matter in that situation. Your pets are just going to get CC'd anyway. Your AoE burst is terrible. Your AoE pad is terrible. You can't do anything anywhere. They're awful. Just completely awful. So D tier. I don't know what I was thinking. I knew a lot of these things and yet let myself put them there for a mechanic that doesn't matter. Who cares about sitting a base? If sitting a base was all that matters, then tanks would actually be good, but it's not. You have to go make plays elsewhere. So
if you are Bad. Just a weird miss from me. Yeah. All of the mage specs. So Frost,
I didn't miss this one, though.
Man, I almost crazy. Frost A tier seems okay. It's got crazy utility with Ice Wall.
Did I convince myself?
It has really good priority spells with like Glacial Spike and some of the new Frostfire stuff. Okay. So they could be a difference maker in team fight. They can they slow. Yeah, A tier is good. They AoE slow. They AoE root. You can put blizzards down and frozen orbs down and root everybody and keep them stuck in a place, keep them sluggish and like they're walking through molasses. They can't move. They can't get where they need to get. You're still bursting them with Glacial Spike and your Frostfire goes.
Ice Lance.
You have Polyana Healer if you absolutely need to. It can heal somebody full if you're not running the PvP talent. They can also break instantly, but it's there and it's an option. You can see C-Cap with Polymorph. Now that's big. Maybe it's S.
Thank you.
Is Frost Mage S tier?
Yes.
Is it? Right? Because it can, oh my God, dude. I think it can cap a node. It can defend a node with double block, with kiting, with barriers, with really good roots for self-peeling itself to get, and it can sit in both blocks so somebody gets there in case it turns into a 2v1. It can team.
Okay, I finally convinced myself. I'm gonna leave this below God tier just because God tier is going to be reserved for only the most destructively overpowered 2 specs, and you'll see them very soon. Maybe 3, we'll see. But it is 100% S, like S plusy, right? The AoE slow part is so vile. The other mages not having the damage profile and the AoE slow is why they're not good at all and why Frost is so insane. You can stop everybody at the same time. You can proc roots, you can proc slows. Your slows are really big, like 70% slows. All that Glacial Spike stuff, no, it's just Ice Lance damage. Your profile of damage is just instantly impactful everywhere. You can do damage to everything all the time. You can slow everything all the time. You can Ice Wall. Ice Wall is crazy. I didn't even represent. I talk about that, I think, but I don't represent it well enough. You can Ice Wall the tunnel in Warsong, and then they can't get to your FC. Or the FC can't get away. Every FC has some tool to get out of things, except for Ice Wall, where it just stops them right in their tracks. Frost Mage, S. Such an S tier spec. I'm glad I got there eventually. But yeah. This is the hardest one. It really is. I even did research on where I wanted Mage to be, and I'm still second guessing myself. I had it B, and now I want it A because it's got this living bomb toolkit, which is not as crazy as it was in Dragonflight, but it's got all these things that can help spread and put up new living bombs, which would then cleave really hard. No, it doesn't have the toolkit for. I'm saying B. It can't do what Frost can do, where it can do all of that and then also have the double block and the better peels and the on-demand point of importance, right? So Glacial Spike takes all the pressure off of everybody because if they're not going Mage, then he's doing everything. And if they are going Mage, then the healers do whatever they want, right? He's got that. Okay, that's a team fight talk. There really isn't much team fights. I'm going to cut myself short there. Fire Mage is abysmal. It turns out when you take out the proc slows, the proc roots, and the damage profile of Frost, you're left with just a silly utility bot that doesn't matter. Fire Mage is D. And that's pretty generous. Nobody plays this spec. It's terrible. When you see one on your team, you're really sad. Fire Mage cannot do anything at all because, again, you strip everything good away from Frost, and what are you left with? Just some parts of Frost that are still okay, like Polymorph. And yeah, wow. That's bad. I can't believe I almost put that today.
That importance, it's so bad. Right? You have to look at RBG prowess, I would say, and thus are B. Argue that in the comments. Yeah, I will listen. Because Frost Mage is only S tier because of a comment I got on the other video. So congratulations to you.
Good, thank you, you guys. Because holy cow, yes, that is S tier.
Sorry, spent a lot of time with that. Really important.
Oh, I skipped Arcane. I must not talked about that very much at all.
It's the perfect RBG toolkit. It's everything you want. Slows, disruption. Okay, I convinced myself. Frost Mage S tier. The other 2 Mage specs just don't have.
I don't know what I said about Arcane, but Arcane is like has all the problems that Fire has, but with some more crazy single target burst and crazy mobility. So I would just bring it down to C tier. It is not as dumpster fire as, oh my god, it might actually be. This one's funny because I don't have ladder evidence because nobody plays either of these specs because they all play Frost, right? So I actually have to just amend my point, but I don't get to just
use the evidence to prove it. So, I mean, it's probably better than fire, but I don't know if it's an entire tier better than fire. I'll leave it there because under the right hands, it's got mobility to get everywhere, and it's got really crazy single target bursts. So when you see Hansel playing this thing, he can make plays. But nobody really plays this thing. If Volts came back, maybe we'd see some arcane love. So it's really hard to put it anywhere. It's certainly not B, though. So let's put it above fire, but below B tier. Okay, so now, of course, we have to go on to all three lock specs. This one is equally as hard. I had Destro A. I'm going to make a distinction for you right now. Destro, I think, is the highest secondary stat. Or sorry, no, Lock is the highest secondary stats scaling class in the game. Is that true? I think you guys would agree with that. What that means is the more secondary stats they get more have stuff. All of those secondary stats. It's like that's a really important distinction. Like, can Destro get a cast off without all the haste that it has late?
Doesn't need to.
Like, I'm feeling this. Okay, and we have to... Let's talk about Demo first. So, Demo is not good in RBGs through the entire history of the rated Battleground bracket, because what it does is summons a bunch of... So it looks like I put all three lock specs out at the same time and then start talking about them. Let's start with Demo first. Demo is awful. I actually had somebody try and convince me I was wrong in the comments. Sorry. Looks like that's totally true. Demo does struggle with pet play just being bad in the BG environment. It can't even hold bases. It can't grab bases. It can't do anything. Demo is just abysmal. So that one was correct. Let's look at Destro and Aflock. I think these are the correct spots for them too. That's going to be crazy to hear about Aflock, but hear me out. Aflock has exactly really high representation from Dean. It did just get nerfed recently in a couple of ways. It's still fantastic in team fights. There's actually not a lot of team fights. There's almost none. There's no big team fights like 6v6 and 8v8, and that's where Affliction excels. It doesn't really help you to dot 2 people at a base and deep one, does it? Right? So that doesn't matter. You could dot 3 people at a base and market, but market's generally the spin node, and all you're doing is just dotting 2 healers, and I don't know how much that's going to do for you, or 1 healer. Aflock, if you look at the ladder, has Dean, one of the best BGers to ever play, Aflock, really high. But then it falls off a cliff, and it's because I think the average player playing Aflock, I mean, if you ever have triple Aflock against triple Rogue, you're going to see the problems of a spec that does not make impact plays except in the exact situation it wants to be in, which is like Warsong Gulch, dotting everybody else in the middle of the map, slowing everybody, rotting them, or rotting them as they run up the tunnel. But the problem is there's a lot of maps. They're not that crazy at any of the base sitting ones because the team fights are not what they used to be, where you take 2 people away and make it a blitz environment with a blitz rule set. There's just a lot more movement. You don't have big 8v8s. You have 2v2s and 3v3s, and Aflock struggles into that. So I think its overwhelming oppressiveness in team fight keeps it up, but its bad contribution to... I mean, I guess I could just move it S tier, but I think after the nerfs, and because of the representation I see at the lower end of the ladder, I would say for the average player, I think A is really good. A, that's a good spec, A tier spec. I think Destro is also properly placed, but this is very hard to read from the ladder. Again, it struggles with all the same things, but it does not need to get cast off. It just has the wither and instant cast damage profile. So you could maybe put Destro A as well, but that, remember, you're putting that in a tier with a lot of impact specs, like Feral, and Fury Warrior and Windwalker can make impacts really quickly, and Outlaw Rogue, oh my goodness. So I think maybe I'm happy with it where it is. Of extremely peelable. That's really hard. If anything is not super set in stone from how the ladder is developed, it's probably Lock. I think Demo is correct. Aflock is between A and S, and Destro is between A and B. So if you want to flip them to S and A, feel free. We don't have exactly the evidence we need right now for me to be super confirmed about anything. So now I'm just talking about Lock for a while here. So I'll skip all of that. Oh, here we go. Each individual instance of a dispel makes it more and more bad that you dispelled it because you take all the damage from every dispel individually. Shadow Priest does not do that because it's a fear. So you get all the fears at the same time, and all you do is get feared once. Right? So if you MD Aflock dots, you die instantly. If you MD Shadow Priest dots, you get feared for 2 seconds. Oh no, right? Like,
yeah.
Like, So Shadow Priest Dispel Protection in RBG situation is very bad. Of course, you could pair it with an AF-Lock, but this is Battleground Blitz. You don't get to choose your partners. If you don't have an AF-Lock, its Dispel Protection is really, really bad. It's a good train target. It's survivable in Arena, but only because it can rotate defensives pretty well. And RBGs, it's very difficult to rotate defensives because now you have 5 DPS that could be hitting you, and 3 of them could be melee. It has been S tier before. Cascade in Warlords of Draenor, I'm showing my age right now, was like 70,000 numbers on your screen, and you just pressed one button and it just bounced to everybody you were top. That's kind of like what Halo is actually right now. Halo being their top damage was very surprising to me. It's from the new hero talents. They do good damage. They have good C, stun, silence, fear. They are not mobile, and they're not quite impact players at a base. So I end up struggling between putting this at B and C forever and ever, and then I end up putting it at C. I think I'm fine moving it up to B. Yeah, I'm fine with that. It is all of those things that we just talked about. So I think I'm just going to leave SB. It's not even very played, so. It's a 1v1 class. It's not a skirmisher. Right? You can't do anything with Ellie off point unless you're just 10 times better than them. And if you are, that's awesome. Then good for you. You're great. But if they're as good as you playing a skirmisher, aren't you in trouble? I mean, so Ellie has this unbelievable damage profile and it has knock. Ooh, it has knock though. It has knock. Oh, I'm trying to put it up to S. It's not S. It's not even A. Ellie has one player representing it on ladder, and then it drops off a cliff. It does suffer from that. It doesn't have crazy mobility. It doesn't have crazy 1v1 and 2v2 potential. And its team fights that it would excel in are few and far between. There's just not a lot of team fighting in BG Blitz. I think it's just a B tier spec. Yeah, it's just a B tier spec. Bring it off of S. And now we can... Oh, we're talking about healers. Did I get all of the casters? Looks like it. Awesome. And now we can go on to healers. Mistweaver S. This is going to be great. What doesn't it have? Holy cow. I mean, Mistweaver almost made onto the top 5 RBG, Monk onto the top 5 RBG, but the problem is it's the only spec that's going to be up there. So it can't be, because that was a top 5 BG Blitz classes list. You can go check that video out. I've talked about it like 5 times. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's just the last couple of videos on my channel. You're in. You can reverse it. You can just immune them, take everything off of them, and heal them. That makes every situation, no matter how bad it is, savable as long as you have revival up. Is an extremely powerful cooldown in Cocoon for both getting back to a base and cocooning the base sitter, and now they're completely fine, and you're allowed to probably just go back because now the team fight is winning, or rather the skirmish is winning, and you can get back to the team fight to help that be winning. You can do it on FC to keep them alive, of course. I mean, that's just a fantastic panic button that doesn't really overwrite. It's not like you're stacking defensives. Like if you pain sub somebody and ironbark somebody, then you've kind of stacked defensives. But Life Cocoon just gives you this shield that also tops them because it increases all your healing done to them. So it's just like a you're okay button. Yeah, okay. I say a lot of good things about Mistweaver. It is the flag carrier, actually, and it's fantastic at it with its slow immunity and double roll port. It can do port play to make it invulnerable on Twin Peaks and Warsun Gulch, as long as you know where to put your port and when to put your port. It actually spins a base forever. It has a fantastic spinning toolkit, so you can double roll port on top of the base, cap it on Deep Wind, and then spin it forever by being both immortal and a good spinner because of your ROP and other tools like this. So very, very difficult to even 3v1 cap on a Mistweaver early, and then he can just hold it until it caps over, and then you've just lost the base in a 3v1. Mistweaver is S tier. What can't it do? It can even run the flag. In fact, I think I have to have a co-god tier ranking for both Mistweaver and Dragon. Mistweaver's throughput is also insanely good, so yeah, I'm going to spoil Dragon. Against all possible odds. Do I talk about that next? Or is it Ardred? Ardred. Other specs that can bring what it just brought and does. Okay, so there you go. This video. It is mobile. It can cap bases. It can hold bases. It can immediately impact a team fight with tree form and instant heals and AoE healing. It has the AoE healing that Mistweaver does not have after Revival is down. Ardred still has more AoE healing. You have Treants. You have Wild Growth. Instant cost regrowth over and over and over. You have hots on everybody. You can hot a flag carrier, and then they can kite away from you and kite away from the... Well, it's funny that healers ended up being the best flag carriers. Our Druid is not as good as Mistweaver and Prez in that role, and it's not as oppressive with its utility toolkit. Like, it can't spin a base forever and ever and ever like Mistweaver can, and it's not literally Preservation Evoker. So I think it makes sense to put those as God tier and then just keep our Druid at S. It does have a lot of tools, and I do see a lot of people playing our Druid pretty high, but it's certainly no Prez and it's certainly no Mistweaver. Now we talk about it. It was S tier, except the healer version. It has that double hover and is immune to slows during it, so it can be anywhere it needs to be. But instead of turning a fight by killing the player, you turn a fight by healing the player, right? And that is extremely important because there's only two heals in an RBG, or in a battleground blitz rather. It's 8 man, okay? It's 2 healers, 6 DPS, or a tank in there, and that means healers are extremely important, and that means a healer being where they need to be is extremely important. And if you cannot peel the Prez for getting to where it needs to be because of double hover immunity, then it's going to be where it needs to be, and that's fantastic as a healer with fantastic... Right. Prez is the best healer in the game in every single situation. Blink hover with a 5-second reduced cooldown and an unburdened flight effectively does make you unpeelable in every situation. When you combine that with Wall and Nullifying Shroud and the immense defensive toolkit that Evoker has, they're the best FC. They're the best, besides Mistweaver, which we put them both in God tier. So yeah, I already spoiled that. Here it goes. It's the best FC aside from Mistweaver. It is the best peel healer. It can do damage, actually, tons of it. So it can quickly turn a 3v2 into a 3v0. It is just impactful everywhere it is, and it's completely unpeelable, which makes it very difficult to deal with. And when DKs are everywhere, trying to grip chains people, even Mistweaver can get grip chains, especially by Frost DK with Delirium, but Prez cannot. They literally cannot. So they're just God right now, and I'm expecting them to be tuned because they're God in Arena as well. It can't get anywhere. True. Priest has the worst mobility almost in the entire game. True. Which is why probably Shadow I should have been ballsy and put Shadow down here too. So foolish not doing that. I might do it at the end. It can't get anywhere. You could get effectively ruined by a Death Knight. Just done. You just do not get to play BG Blitz. I'm almost scared that BG Blitz all disc free stop queuing, because if they ever see a DK, they would just leave. Like, oh my god, you saw blood DK. I don't have any NCCC stuff. You don't have Nullifying Shroud. You don't have immunities. You don't have stealth again. You don't have anything to be able to play BG Blitz. When you can play BG Blitz in a team fight that's stationary, you're fantastic. You have good utility, you have good defenses, you have Dome. For a Dome on a point, that's fantastic. Go Disruption. You have an AoE defensive. You have decent self-survivability. Really good, and you have great throughput while snowballing pressure. So if the game was just 8v8 Slayer on a map, right? Like, you would be so great, but you cannot get to anywhere you need it. Okay, that's exactly right. Except maybe it should be B. I'll probably move it to B because it's what it can do in those fights is not to be ignored. Double paints up. Its shields are enormous, like 3 million. It does have extremely good self-sustain. It does crazy damage. Its healing, its throughput, its stability in a team fight is immense. But if you look at the leaderboard, it can't be any higher than B. The highest disc is pretty decent. And they're also duo queuing with Weed Tyler, a sub-rogue, every single game. I think that inflates the value. Disc is very tough because what I said about it is 100% true. You can kidnap it with a DK and take it out of the game. So all of a sudden, you're playing a spec. That's done. You just lost. You're just gone. You will never play. You will never get off the DK. You are capturable. You are CCable, and all of those things, and you're immobile. And you have no way out, and that's what happens. So with the popularity of DKs, that really hurts Disc's ability. And yes, there's not that many 6v6 team fights. So I put it at B just because when it is healing and doing things, it's so great at it. And it's 3 million shields, 4 million shields or whatever after a penance cannot be ignored. But it struggles with what I talked about. So forget about peeling back to a base. You could never get there. That's true. All the problems from not healing, because Disc does it with Atonement, but Holy doesn't. Their cooldowns are great for an arena situation, but I don't think they're that great for RBGs. It doesn't give them a ton of AoE throughput except for Form, which makes them unpeelable, which is fantastic. But their single target-based healing cooldowns are not good because their AoE toolkit is kind of lacking and they suffer from all the problems from disc, right? So instead of like getting it double roll and then getting back to their port that they set mid and pressing revival, the Holy Priest is just like waddling back there and then has form to start doing a lot of it. Like, let me run down the situation, and then all the Holy Priest said,
okay, I know what situation I'm about to run down, but it's all true. Holy Priest is abysmal. Arena-based healing cooldowns are so bad in BG Blitz because of what you need to be good at BG Blitz. Mistweaver can solo spin, can completely turn a team fight instantly, can get anywhere it needs to do, and Holy can do none of those things. It does not have atonement-based healing, like I said, so it doesn't even get to like do damage and heal at the same time. So like on Temple, it can't contribute super well. It can't run flags, it can't hold orbs, it hates every single thing about Battlegrounds. It's fine in arenas when it's tuned properly, and I don't even know if that's true right now. Holy Priest is abysmal, a true abomination, and belongs directly in detail. So bad.
They have Freedom Steed.
Yeah.
They have Freedom Steed, so at least they can get out of quad grip from Blood DK. They have heals, they have bubble, and
I already know this. We can move on through this one. It is a very underwhelming spec. It does not have that BG Blitz on-demand, high-impact healing cooldown tree that the other guys have. It is swappable. It suffers from output. It's getting a rework. It's getting a rework for all these reasons. So when the rework comes out, I think HPAL is going to be a lot better. I like having HPAL below disc, and I like having HPAL above Holy Priest. So C tier is probably a perfect spot for it.
Have it exactly one, I'm sure. Stream. They can get out of bad situations with Ghost Wolf, but it's nothing like the mobility of the top three. They have fine AoE burst cooldowns with Ascendance into like Spirit Walker's Grace and just casting some healing surges while not being kickable. You could just heal a bunch of people with the Ascendance duplication effect.
I'm going to pause this one early because I didn't really know what to say about rsham, honestly. Its healing throughput is fine, but its utility is completely lacking. Again, when you compare it to the toolkit of these obscene healers, you realize how much you need to be more than just a healer to be a good healer in BG Blitz. You have to be a difference maker, just like DPS are a difference maker, and rsham is not that. Again, it lacks the mobility that they have. It lacks the on-demand urgency, both in healing and in like disruption. Like, again, ROP and bubbling yourself and spinning a flag forever is something rsham will never be able to do. I think I'm more comfortable with it at B. So before we get into tanks, I think I've already kind of gone through. For some reason, I did tanks at the beginning as well. I guess I considered the melee at the beginning, and then I was like, wait, I should have a tank section. So I already have Vengeance at A and Blood DK at B, and I already talked about how tanks are just very underwhelming. In a BG Blitz environment, it pairs tanks with tanks. They're not as good at flag carrying as they used to be. They can sit a base forever, but you don't really want to sit a base forever. You don't really want anybody to plant themselves at a base, and they're not that urgent, right? They do not have crazy damage. So I will go through right now and conclude the video by saying tanks are kind of just bad. There's no tank representation. Tanks are extremely low in Battleground Blitz, and they just don't do a lot. I would say we would have to do something like this. Brewmaster down to C tier because of all of the things I just said. It can FC, but so can Windwalker or Mistweaver rather, 10 times better. And Prot Pally is just awful. It can't do anything. I don't know what I was thinking. It can't cap bases because the thing sitting those bases will never lose a base to a Prot Pally. It can't really even hold bases super well because of the things coming after them, like the God tier sub-rogues. It doesn't even plant itself on a point super well, and like I said, that's not a big deal. It has no damage. Its utility doesn't really matter in BG Blitz. And Prot Warrior is horrible. The one thing it could probably do is kind of be like, ooh, that's surprising amounts of damage for a Prot Warrior at a team fight, but the team fights don't exist, and thus Prot Warrior does not exist. And this is what we have. We have God tier specs. Sub-Rogue, Mistweaver, and Prez. I don't think too many people would argue with that. If anything, there could be a God plus tier for Sub-Rogue. It's that good, but Prez would be right on its heels. I like moving Unholy up with Frost, and they're just neighbors right there as chain spots where one has an AoE stun, the other one has more AoE pad and survivability and better 1v1 potential.
DH and Boomy, Dev and Marks, these I all locked in. And Frostmage, thank goodness I put that up to S tier originally because it belongs there. Ardrid stays. Guardian is the only other tank that I missed talking about, and it is not S tier anymore because tanks are not S tier. It's probably not even B. It probably matches Brewmaster and C because they're just not needed. Again, they're not good FCs. They're much squishier than they used to be with tank nerfs that they put in. Probably to combat people just sitting there and being immortal. I don't know, but they nerfed tanks, and tanks are bad. So this may be the final list right here for me, based on evidence we have from the ladder participation, ladder rating, achievements in high MMR games that I've played on my Frosty K. Now you have the best tank being Vengeance, and I think that matches up with the leaderboard rating exactly. Second being Blood, and then all the other tanks being in the gutter. You have the standard B tier of like Arms being S when it's with the right team, but then like D when it's with nobody that it can help. Brett being a surprising lock-in at B. You have a lot of good stuff here, so take it in, look at it, compare it to the ladder if you wish. I think it locks in with the ladder ratings very well. Some specs are a little underplayed like Frost, but then the highest player is 2620. So it shows the true power of it. And I'm 2750 MMR on Frost. I just don't play as many games. I have a lot of different things that I do on stream, kind of a variety stream for WoW. So I'll be playing a lot more Frost, and I'll give us another representation for 2650 as Frosty KCR. So this was really fun. If you enjoyed it, let me know. I'll do it again. And thanks for being a part of this fun-ass season with me. I'll see you guys real soon.